the only thing that is really truly essential to win a campaign is just hard work. Beating the pavement, knocking on doors, talking to people, that's really the main ingredient. And there are some pretty terrible people and some less than smart people who win their races because they simply outwork everybody else.
Hi, everyone. It's Monique Alcala, longtime campaigner, big fan of democracy, and your host for My First Race, the show where we talk with the country's top politicos about their very first campaign. Hey everyone. Today we've got with us writer, activist, veteran, and most importantly, native Texan Charlotte Clymer. But before we get to Charlotte, I really want to talk a little bit about why she was one of the first people that I wanted to invite on the pod. Now, whether you're a longtime activist or just getting started on your campaign, you will understand when I say that the friends that you make along the way in politics and campaigns are simply some of the most amazing relationships that you'll have in your lifetime. And that's true for me with Charlotte. Since we met a few years ago, she's been a wonderful, insightful friend and leader, has shown up for me when I need an inspiring speaker. She's checked up on me while I'm navigating the insane political landscape in our home state of Texas. And following some really difficult days, she's texted to me, "How are you doing?" and checked up on me. And maybe she's also given me some relationship advice and said, "He's a total loser and you need to get on Raya." So thank you so much, Charlotte, for being a friend. Thank you for all you do everywhere, all across the country. And thank you for joining us today on My First Race.
Hey,
Um,
lady. It's great to be here.
hey, yeah, thank you. I love hearing about Texans and leaders coming out of Texans. So, to start off, I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal background and how you ended up here.
Well, first of all, I also love to hear about Democrats and progressives who come out of Texas because as any Texan who works in politics and has lived in DC or New York or LA or Chicago knows by now, whenever you mention you're from Texas, more often than not, the person to whom you say this will get this look on their face like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like they feel bad for you. Every time I tell them, no, I'm very proud to be from Texas. Like we're amazing. I love Texans.
Yeah.
And we have such a rich history of democratic and progressive politics. Barbara Jordan came out of Texas, Ann Richards, Cecile Richards, Elise Hogue, the Castro brothers, Wendy Davis. I mean, we could go on and on and on. We could be here for hours just talking about the great Democrats in Texas politics.
Yeah.
So, I was raised in, I think, a strange time for Texas. So I came of age in the 90s, and this is just at the beginning. I mean, just at the beginning of the Republican rise in Texas politics. So, Governor Ann Richards had lost her reelection bid to a baseball team owner and political family scion who was not really that well known at the time, George W. Bush. And for the rest of the 90s and into the early 2000s, there was this very odd, I think, transition from going where we were, which is like, I would say, a proud, certainly a centrist Democratic stronghold, but with a lot of progressive politics thrown in there, to suddenly, in the span of 10 or 15 years, becoming pretty red state, at least electorally. And so it was confusing being a teenager because, you know, I read all these stories from the not so distant past of these great Democratic leaders in Texas, but I'm watching every election result, 96, 98, 2000, 2002, 2004. You're seeing the state get more red over time. And all of our statewide candidates are losing again and again. So I think, not only did that really put a chip on my shoulder, but it was also an essential education because the things that the country are going through right now, Texas was going through 20 years ago. And I think that does make us a little hardier when it comes to our outlook and our sense of not quitting in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. I have friends who are from more blue states like Massachusetts or California, or Delaware. There's from Delaware, Sarah McBride. When there's this sense of, gosh, things are really suck right now. How are we ever going to climb back from this? I just think, oh, I grew up with this. you know,
Yeah.
like this is something we've been dealing with for a long time. I grew up really interested in politics, idolizing Democratic politicians. I went into the military right out of high school and served 6 years, then got out, went to Georgetown University where I finished my degree, and then I stayed in DC to work in politics, work at national politics. I knew I didn't want to do local or state only because I really wanted to work on national policy. I wanted to get big bills passed through Congress, which, now I look back on that and I would probably have told my from the mid 20s, like, just move back to Texas and work on local policy or work on state level stuff, knowing what I know now, not knowing what was to come over the next 10, 15 years. But, at the same time, I worked in progressive communications and democratic communications for quite some time, and then I became a full-time opinion writer. So I've had a Substack blog for the past 4 years. When I mention that to people, they assume it's a hobby, like a side hustle. And I can understand why, because the idea that anyone would get paid to write their opinions for a living outside of like New York Times columnists is a bit
Mhm.
strange. That is literally my job. Like that is my 9 to 5. Having this blog, writing about politics, religion, culture, trying to bring people into perspectives that they don't usually get. Um, because I think what we're seeing right now is this increasing box theory with how legacy media frames issues.
Mhm.
They always do it as like a binary, right? Like it's LGBTQ people versus non-LGBTQ people. It's white people versus people of color, Christians versus everybody else. It's Democrats, Republicans, and it really annoyed me, observing this over time in DC because it's almost as though a lot of journalists, what they'll do is they need clicks, and
Mhm.
simple narratives are easier to sell because people don't want complication. Most people don't want complication. Most people, I think, really want like the TLDR. And, if you can give them a quick summary that makes sense and it's easy to swallow, then, they're more likely to read your stuff and click on your articles and whatnot. I definitely noticed it as you did when we were younger with election narratives because we work in politics, and so
Mhm.
let's say we're talking about like the 2010 or 2014 midterms and the stories that came out of those both, and I would see reporters put forward like a summary or I guess a thesis of what happened, and it made no sense to me because
Mhm.
like that's not what I saw when I was actually working with folks on these things and reading everything and supporting so many of these candidates and seeing their weaknesses too. I think what really, really completely changed my thinking forever on legacy media was the 2016 election and the way that Trump's unabashed racism, bigotry, just his general nonsense was waved away, and that Trump supporters were going to the ballot for him because of quote economic anxiety.
Mhm.
And that is not what I saw at all. None of the people I talked to, that's what they saw, both Republicans and Democrats. So, I think with my blog, what I try to do is just get to essential truths and,
Mhm.
and at least a workable nuance that people need to hear and that they're not going to see most of the time in the New York Times, the Washington Post, or even, often their local newspapers.
Whoever's listening right now, whenever if you have a chance, go please follow Charlotte Clymer on Substack and social media all over the place because there's like so much knowledge to be gained out of all the different accounts. So, um, yeah, so I really wanted to start this podcast because some of the most amazing stories that I hear are about people's first time working on a campaign. And I think there are a lot of fun variables that sort of create that space, right? We're all young, we're all optimistic, we're all trying to make a difference in the world. And I think that's very true for certain generations. And so I'm excited to hear about your first race, Charlotte.
Yeah, it's funny because my first race was in 2004. I ran for city council in Round Rock.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was a senior in high school, and the councilwoman in that seat had just vacated it overnight. Like
Hmm.
I think she had to leave for a medical emergency or what have you. So they had a special election. I want to say it was within, gosh, a month of her vacating. And I was reading that, and I just turned 18, and so I thought, why not? I I picked up some petitions from City Hall, and I walked around in my neighborhood, and I got the requisite number of registered voters, filed a petition, and went for it. And I didn't really make a big deal out of it at first. And then when city officials found out and local media found out that I was running, they're like, "Who's this kid? Who's this random 18-year-old running for office?" It was it was a huge learning experience for me, um, because I didn't know what I was doing, first of all.
Hmm.
And when I look back on it, this is before social media, really. This is before smartphones. This is before, you could easily organize people through online infrastructure. And so, what I did was I just went around knocking on doors and talking to people about, the race and why they should vote for me. I think I got maybe $1,200 total in donations for the campaign, and, like, one of the checks came from this, like, local donor who apparently didn't like someone else who was running, and so just to stick a finger in his eye, he, like, gave me, like, a check for, like, $750.
Nice.
Just randomly, just called me up to get coffee and was like, "Hey, you don't know me, but, I think that the young people are our future," and he gave me the check, and, I found out later that he didn't like, one of the other candidates.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was so interesting. There were 5 candidates, myself and 4 much older men, and I was, like, the youngest candidate by, God, at least 25 years. I mean,
Hmm.
all these gentlemen were in at least their late 40s. So, it lasted a month, talked to everybody I could, in my part of town, talked to reporters, got featured on local news, participated in an in-person debate at City Hall, which was pretty cool. So they televised the debate on local access, and
Wow. Oh my gosh.
it's somewhere. I'm sure it's somewhere in someone's archive, or maybe it's lost forever. But I wound up placing 3rd out of the 5 candidates.
Nice.
And
Great
at the
job.
time, I was really disappointed. I was so because us type A kids, like, we got to get, like, the gold star. Um, but no, what I learned from that race, and what I tell young people now is, you can be the smartest person in the world. You can have the right values, but the only thing that is really truly essential to win a campaign is just hard work. Beating the pavement, knocking on doors, talking to people, that's really the main ingredient. And there are some pretty terrible people and some less than smart people who win their races because they simply outwork everybody else.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently, especially now that campaigns have evolved and we actually have we don't have to print out lists or anything anymore, and like the whole digital revolution has happened, and we have Substack, we have TikTok, God, man, when I started, we didn't have any of that stuff. But yeah, I feel like right now the voters are looking for an authentic candidate. And I think that, absent of all of these things, like that's what gave us some of our greatest leaders like on the ground, right? Like people actually had to show up and talk to people in real life and say, this is what I'm running for. So that's incredible. Do you
And
think
avoiding
you'll
the cookie cutter route, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't fake it, I don't think, like, in person. Some of the things that I talk about with some candidates I've worked, with over the course of my career is that some people are like, "Oh, well, they're just not charismatic," or, whatever, and I say, "Well, with enough earned media or paid media, you can make anyone charismatic." But yeah, I think authenticity right now is just such an important thing that voters are just desperate to find out of candidates, and I think we saw a lot of that this past Tuesday. I mean, we had some incredible candidates that were running in Virginia, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia. I mean, Gavin Newsom has really, I think, evolved his entire political identity in a really interesting and I think relatable way. Like I started following Gavin Newsom like not too long ago.
It's been a shift, I think. It's been a huge shift in how, we think about political communications. And
Mhm.
I think I've told you this before, but, when a young Democrat in college asked me how they should get ready for a political career if they want to run for
Mhm.
office someday, I usually tell them to, don't put all of your energy into like college Democrats
Mhm.
or a political club. You need to like figure out what cause you really care about and then just pour yourself into that.
Yeah.
If that reproductive rights, then start an organization dedicated to reproductive rights. Do
Mhm.
internships and repro orgs. If it's national security, you should be involved in um, getting internships at like a publication that deals with foreign policy or something to
Mhm.
that effect. Like, find the thing that you would want to work on most in politics, become or start working your way toward becoming a subject matter expert in that area. And then that's how you really, get into a space where you do come across as authentic. Because what I've seen, and I think our generation is most guilty of this, by the way, folks our
Mhm.
age. Like, we have a lot of peers, bless their hearts, who wanted to run for office someday, and they just did like a what they felt was like a very straightforward linear route. Like you do a political science major, maybe an economics minor, and you get like a DNC internship, and then you do like a Hill internship, and then you work on the Hill, and then you go to law school, or you may go to HKS, Harvard Kennedy School.
Mhm.
And by the time you've done all of that, and then you decide you want to run for office, voters are looking at that and being like, okay, but what do you care about? What
Yeah.
gets you up in the morning? And often what they'll see is like this, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but it's just honest. Like they see an automaton.
Mhm.
They don't see like someone with like warm blood running in their veins who really wants to help people leave the world better than how they found it. So I really, really like young people who go into politics through very alternative routes, who
Yeah.
kind of build that initial professional phase of their lives in an area that's not directly in politics, and then find themselves in a politics because of how much they cared about that issue.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I tell people this all the time. It's like you have, I think, two different types of people that are in this space. People who take that linear route, and you have people that have struggled, how, can't have $5 in their bank account, if that, or they're the single mom who just has been an activist and um, got parking tickets that turned into warrants like me and got put in jail for a little bit because I couldn't afford to pay my tickets. It's like all of those things. I feel like I'm hypersensitive in the political space to people who have taken the linear route because I feel like there's always like a thing that they want to run for and everything that they do, like the decision making around politics and the things that their decision making is always based around that thing that they want to achieve. And I feel like there's like a substantive difference between the people that have like really experienced some shit and like have no like wake up in the actually Beto is like this. Like,
Mhm.
believe it or not, Beto, when I've talked to him ever since I met him a couple of years ago, I've noticed that he has like so many different opportunities I think that he could pursue. And he is like the type of person who's like, this sounds like a good idea. Let me think about it. And then he'll like think about something else, and then he'll think about something else, and then he'll, like, wake up one day and he's like, "Fuck it, I'm not gonna do any of that stuff. I'm gonna actually do this." And then he does it, and he does it really well, right? And then he inspires people, and I think, like, that's part of it. I don't know anything about, like, how he grew up or anything like that, but I think that what he has either mastered or just has a really incredible talent for is listening to people, understanding, like, what their life experiences are, and I think that whatever he has gone through throughout his life has been really incredibly valuable for the way that he interacts with people. So I love seeing normal people run for office, and I don't know, I feel like that's what we saw with the New York city race. Now, whether or not wherever people fall on the spectrum of whether or not you like Zoran Mamdani or whatever, like people, I mean, I think it's like indisputable. Like he was able to connect with people. We've seen terrible candidates emerge like as the winner in plenty of races, but this was like really incredible win for him in New York City. And, you know, like some of the people that actually, Abigail Spanberger, I was telling somebody the other day that I had like a 3-minute conversation with her when she was running for Congress the first time against Dave Bratt. And the thing that stuck with me was that she said to me over the phone, I don't think she'll remember, but 'cause it was like a 3-minute conversation, but she said to me, "I'm so sick and tired of people who just take selfies and don't knock doors getting the credit." And I was like,
Mhm.
so great. Like, thank you for noticing that because so many people don't.
I mean, how many I mean, like, there's this I do not go to victory parties if I didn't volunteer on that campaign. I
Mhm.
am
That's a
I am
great role.
very insistent about that
Mhm.
because, you know, we all know the people who don't do any canvassing, don't do any
Yeah.
phone banking, don't really fundraise that much, and then
Mhm.
just kinda show up to a victory party, especially if it's been a hard campaign, and they're like, "Oh, we did it," and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but did we though? Did we do it?" You know?
I know.
It's a weird thing, and there are folks in politics and certainly some in democratic politics who really do treat all of this like it's a game, and it's just
Mhm.
about relentless brand building.
Yeah.
That really pisses me off. It does.
Mhm.
This is way too serious, and there is far too much at stake for any person to be centering their brand instead of doing the work and focusing on just getting Democrats elected. Even if you may not like them completely, even if you may disagree with them on some things, I'd rather someone with a D next to their name be in office than someone with an R next to their name.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't know. The industry is very interesting right now. I mean, at least from the time that I started like 15 years ago, like there is I think the biggest difference is that we do have, I think, some level of like celebrity strategists, right? Like, and some of them are great, and some of them are not so great. And it's like, how do people who want to run for office like sort of filter out the noise and like ask the questions that are able to filter out like who's good and who's bad? There's just so much to fix this in this industry.
There's some opportunism afoot.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. This is such a hard line of work, and it can
Hmm.
break your heart over and over again. Everyone makes mistakes, and it's one of these things where you just have to have grace for yourself and for each other in order to build a successful political movement.
Yeah.
But man, I got to tell you, sometimes when I see a person in the political space who it's clear they don't care about doing the work so much as they care about kind of putting their brand forward, it makes me angry. It does.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I created this space because I found myself like after the state party when like really mad. You know, it was like a process of like just processing the trauma, processing like bad information, or bad actors, and it's not just here in Texas. I think it's just all over the place. You know, since we're from here, I feel like a really strong emotional attachment and like really wanting the state to be there's just so much better. And when I am surrounded by bad actors and people who like clearly don't want to do the work or maybe even more so, like, don't want to listen to an alternative way of, like, doing things differently, like, that makes me angry, and so I found myself just waking up angry or, like, going to sleep angry, and so I was like, "What is my like, what are the things I find happy?" And it's like talking to you and talking to, to people that I've worked with throughout my career and hearing about the things that they're, concerned about, like, just a lot of people are having children now, and it's like, "Oh, great, that's so cute." They're all married and they're all having babies now, but yeah, I wanted to create, like, a nice little positive space so that we can all be supportive of one another, and maybe even, if somebody is, like, on the verge of, like, jumping on campaigns, like, hear about some of the most amazing stories that I've heard in my lifetime.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting for us too, because we're of an interesting age. Because we grew up during the Clinton presidency and the Bush presidency. Then obviously our Kennedy moment was, President Obama being elected. And then we've really spent I've spent all of my 30s now, pretty much in the Trump era.
Mhm,
He was elected 3 weeks after I turned 30, and I'm gonna be 40 next year, and we're still in this era, and it's crazy to me when I think about that. So it's interesting to watch those of us entering the middle age phase of our lives and now looking back on the last 25, 30 years of American politics
mhm.
and kind of taking stock of it all, I guess.
Yeah, I just am astonished, and honestly, I know that TikTok is like such a powerful way to communicate with people. I haven't gotten on it. I don't know how to get on it, and I'm trying to force myself to evolve and like really encourage people to do that. But yeah, the political landscape, our industry, it's constantly changing, and I'm hoping everybody like stays vigilant and wants to when you get in this business like stay hopeful and optimistic and really do some great work. How are you feeling about 2026?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was optimistic before Tuesday.
Really?
I was, yeah. Yeah. Looking at all the numbers and the redistricting war that's going on right now,
Mhm.
all the candidates that are coming forward, especially in the Senate races.
Yeah.
I felt before Tuesday, I felt like we're definitely gonna win the House. It may be by only, like, 4 or 5 seats,
Mhm.
but we'll win the House. I was coming around pretty much to the idea that we would be competitive for the Senate. Like, we would
Mm.
have at least a decent chance of getting to 50-50 in the Senate.
Mhm.
And now, after Tuesday, I am way more optimistic. I think, if we really keep up this energy for the next year, we could see a generational landslide in the House.
Mhm.
We could definitely win back the Senate and maybe win it by 2 or 3 seats
Mhm.
if we play our cards right. So, I'm pretty optimistic about 2026.
Yeah. Any candidates in particular you're excited about?
Well, Mr. Tallarico in Texas
Yeah, yeah.
makes me really happy. He talks like no Democrat I've ever heard, especially one vying for federal office. It's not like there haven't been Democrats who are outwardly, Christian in their philosophy, like, Nancy Pelosi, obviously Catholic, and
Mhm.
President Biden, Catholic. So it's not like, Reverend Warnock in Georgia, literal, literal,
Tim
literal,
Kaine.
literal clergy, Tim Kaine, right? So it's not like we don't have folks who are committed people of faith in the Democratic Party. But
Mhm.
the way that Mr. Tallarico talks about faith, it's hard to put it in the right words, but there's a language among Christian conservatives. And the more you hang out with Christian conservatives, the more you kind of pick it up. Like there's phrasing and maybe just patterns of speech, I guess, and terminology and whatnot. And he is really good at, I would say, doing the progressive, maybe center left version of that language.
Mm.
And it's hard to say exactly. It's like it when you see it. And I've heard other progressive Christians talk like that. I've heard myself talk like that. I write like that
Mhm.
sometimes. But watching a politician do it, and for it to come out as so fluent and grounded and natural is so interesting to me. And I think he is the kind of candidate who will go into conservative spaces in Texas and really pill off a lot of Republican votes. He's got that energy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see. I think he was in Amarillo recently, and had a pretty lively crowd out there in Red, Texas. Oh my gosh, oh, this stage breaks my heart. But
Breaks my heart.
I know, but I feel optimistic. I don't know. Like some days I feel like terrible, and then other days I'm like, man, we have to win this state. We have to.
You know what we do, and I have a feeling, and I've had a feeling lately, and maybe I'm completely wrong on this, but I have a feeling in 6 to 8 years, Texas is gonna be blue. It's going to happen very quickly, and
Mhm.
we're gonna look back on this moment and be shocked at how fast it came, because right now it feels very, very far away. Right
Yeah,
now, it feels like we're just working on getting one race,
yeah.
one statewide, like one Senate seat or governor or lieutenant governor, or, even like, agricultural commissioner. If we can get like something
Mhm.
like that would be at least a foothold. But I just have this gut feeling lately that in the next like 6 to 8 years, Texas is going to go blue and it's going to feel like it came overnight and it's going to be very surprising.
Yeah, that's how it felt in Virginia. I moved to Virginia when I was, in 2010 or something and got involved in politics there. And it was like pretty red. We had a lot of red districts. And I think by 2017, we basically had a, repeat of what we saw on Tuesday. I mean, I remember sitting at a bar with my friend Charlie, and we're like, oh, yeah, we'll probably flip like 3 seats, 4 seats or something. Ended up like a lot of people getting elected and flipping the house. It was great. It was great. So
Remember, right before the 2017 election in Virginia, pretty much all the political observers were saying that it was going to be very tight
mhm.
and that who's the Democratic candidate that year? My brain isn't working for governor.
Northam?
Northam, thank you, Ralph Northam. They were saying Ralph Northam might even lose to
Mhm.
Cucciarelli or whatever the hell his name was. Well, I remember listening to NPR. So like NPR, like it's not,
Mhm.
it's a pretty at best it's middle of the road,
Mhm.
and they're giving as much as close of a reasonable take as they can. And even they were saying like, Democrats are not very optimistic about Virginia, and then that night, it was just a landslide.
Yeah.
Virginia Democrats kicked ass that night across the board. That was the night that Danica Roem was elected,
Oh, right.
became the first openly trans person elected to a state legislature.
Yeah, to your point earlier, Danica was like, "Fix this fucking road, man."
Yeah, that's the funny thing about Danica is, like, she's been doing exceptional Democratic communications. I wish she were running the DNC's comms operation, honestly. Did you know when Youngkin won, back in 2021, when he beat, what's his
McCulloch,
face? Yeah,
Terry.
yeah. Yeah, Terry. When he beat Terry, it's funny, if you go to look at the exit polling for Danica's, Senate seat that she won that year, she got Youngkin votes.
Oh,
She did.
for
There
her.
were people who voted for Youngkin and voted for Danica Roem, an openly trans progressive woman.
Mhm.
And so when people tell me that trans people are political anathema or that we can't, you know, that voters are going to be scared of us or be repulsed by
Mhm.
us, I point to Danica Rome. Like
Mhm.
she's already proven that Republicans will vote for a Democratic trans woman if that candidate it makes a convincing case that they're focused on helping their families and making their lives better.
Yeah. Yeah, Danica's great, man. Now senator, right?
Yeah, now senator, state senator, and probably not too far away. Probably either congresswoman or senator. So
Yeah, yeah, go for it. I mean, we've had what, Mark Warner or they've had Mark Warner and Tim Kaine there for a little while.
yeah, yeah, they
Time
sure.
for time
time to maybe it's time to pass the torch. So
I
I don't know.
know. Thank you so much for hopping on, Charlotte. It was absolutely lovely to hear from you and to see your wonderful smiling face. Well, thank you.
And I gotta say, Monique, like you are so damn committed to the practice of politics being something that exists to make the lives of others better, like to improve the lives of others. And even though you are very like highly successful in democratic politics and you're very well liked and beloved throughout the world of democratic politics, You have just been so laser focused on why we all do this, which is to improve people's lives. And I feel like you always prioritize that far above your career or your trajectory or anything else. I feel like for you at the end of the day, it's like, am I helping people going this way? And if I'm not, then should I be going another way? And I wish everyone had that mindset.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Thank you. Well, I'm excited to continue on this podcast and to hopefully have you on again. And then, everyone, if you can, please follow us on social media, subscribe where you get your favorite podcasts, give us 5 stars, apparently, and also follow Charlotte Clymer on all the socials. Charlotte, you want to tell folks like where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. Twitter, Blue Sky, IG, it's just Charlotte Clymer. And I have a Substack called Charlotte's Web Thoughts, which you can find at charlotteclymer.substack.com.
And I'm telling you right now, all to everybody who will listen, you will increase your IQ by a lot by just listening to Charlotte and reading all of her wonderful Substack posts and wonderful
Lies,
insights.
lies.
No, no, it's true. All right. Well, thanks, Charlotte. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, ma'am.